When everything feels urgent, your mind never gets to rest. Sometimes the hardest seasons of your life are not caused by one thing. They're caused by 3 things, 4 things, 5 things, all competing for your attention at the same time. Your health needs your attention. Your money needs your attention. Your work situation needs your attention. Your family needs your attention. Something in the house needs to be handled. Somebody needs an answer. A bill is due. A decision needs to be made. And every time your mind turns towards one problem, another problem says, well, what about me? So even when you're sitting still, you are not resting. Your mind is holding an emergency meeting. One thought is talking about what might happen with your health. Another thought is calculating money. Another thought is trying to figure out what you should do next. Another thought is replaying something that already happened. Another thought is trying to protect your children, your partner, your family, or your future. And after a while, you begin to feel like everything is urgent. Everything feels like it must be solved right now. Everything feels like it has to be held in your mind at the same time. And that is exhausting. A woman I worked with described it as several serious things competing with each other. She had a lot happening in her life. She was receiving medical care and following up with her doctors. I am not a doctor, and my role was not to diagnose or treat her medical condition. My role was to support her emotionally, spiritually, and energetically while she moved through a very stressful season. She was also dealing with unemployment and financial uncertainty, and her health concerns were connected to money concerns. Her money concerns were connected to work concerns. Her work concerns were connected to her sense of safety. And underneath all of those thoughts was one deeper question. Am I going to be okay? That question may be underneath many of your thoughts too. You may think you are worried about a bill. You may think you're worried about the appointment. You may think you're worried about the job. You may think you're worried about what someone is going to say or do. But underneath all of it may be one quiet, frightened question. Am I going to be okay? When your body does not feel sure that the answer is yes, your mind keeps searching. It keeps calculating. It keeps reviewing. It keeps rehearsing. It keeps asking the same questions in different ways. What if this happens? What if that doesn't work? How much will this cost? What will I do next? What am I forgetting? Who can I call? How am I going to fix this? And the mind believes that if it keeps thinking, it will eventually think its way into safety. But sometimes the constant thinking does not create safety. Sometimes it creates more alarm. Your mind begins treating every thought like an emergency. And when everything feels like an emergency, your body never receives the message that it is allowed to rest. That is why you can go to bed tired and still not sleep. That is why you can sit down and still feel tense. That is why you have a quiet moment and immediately fill it with worry. Your body is sitting down, but your mind is still standing guard. It is still watching the door. It is still waiting for the next problem. It is still preparing for the bad news. It is still trying to solve tomorrow before tomorrow comes. And sometimes people call this being responsible. They say, I have to stay on top of everything. I cannot afford to relax. If I stop thinking about it, something will fall apart. I have to be realistic. And yes, there are real things that need attention. There are real appointments. There are real bills. There are real decisions. There are real responsibilities. This is not about pretending that nothing is happening. It is not about ignoring reality. It is not about telling yourself everything is wonderful when you do not feel wonderful. It is about recognizing that you can have several real problems without emotionally living inside all of them every minute of the day. You do not have to hold the entire future in your mind at once. You do not have to answer every question in this moment. You do not have to keep every concern open like 20 tabs on a computer. Because after a while, your system becomes overloaded. And you are not only dealing with the problem, you're dealing with the problem, the fear of the problem, the possible future of the problem, the memory of similar problems, the belief that you have to figure everything out immediately. This is a lot for one body to hold. During the session, I asked this woman to identify one area of her life where she already felt rich. At first, this was difficult because her mind immediately connected only things to money, only things to feeling rich. Even when she thought about things she enjoyed, another thought came in and said, everything I love to do costs money, which she implied she didn't have, so she couldn't enjoy life. That is how fear works. It tries to follow you into every room. You think about rest and fear asks what it will cost. You think about joy and fear tells you why you cannot afford it. You think about the future and fear shows you everything that could go wrong. You think about something you love and fear turns it into another calculation. When everything feels urgent, your mind never gets to rest. Sometimes the hardest seasons of your life are not caused by one thing. They're